Hi, welcome back here. Today I'm going to be showing you another recipe to use up your sourdough discard. If you checked out my other video on the homemade Pop-Tarts, that was we used sourdough discard in that recipe, and I did kind of get into exactly like what sourdough discard was, sourdough starter, all that jazz. So if you want kind of a further explanation on what sourdough discard is, I would go check out that video. But for today, we're going to be making sourdough crackers. This is an even simpler recipe than the Pop-Tart one, and they are delicious. We're going to be hosting a lot of people coming up for the holidays, getting out our charcuterie boards, and these crackers are really great to serve or just have as your snack with your cheese and crackers. They're, a pretty healthy alternative to the crackers that you can buy at the store that tend to have, a lot of ingredients, preservatives, etc. in them. And you're using up a product that would maybe just get thrown away, your discard. So it's a great way to use this up. So I already have my discard here because I'm going to be baking some bread. So I did just feed my starter. So I have my discard. So in this recipe, it's very basic, and you can kind of change up the flavors if you'd like. So you can personalize it to whatever flavor cracker you want, or if you just want a plain salted cracker, whatever you want to do. So all we're going to need is 1 cup of flour, 1 cup of the sourdough discard, a half a teaspoon of salt, a 1/4 cup of olive oil, either a 1/4 cup of fresh herbs, or you can use 2 tablespoons of dried herbs, or you can omit, like I said, you don't have to add herbs, but it does, of course, add some extra yumminess to your crackers. And then 1/8 of a teaspoon of garlic powder, and again, that is optional. Today, as I'm making them, I am using einkorn flour. You could also use all-purpose flour. You could probably use whole wheat flour, whatever flour you would like, but that's what I'm going to be using, so it might look a little bit more like golden in color, because einkorn does have that like kind of buttery yellow color to it. Yeah, so we're just gonna go ahead and get started. It is super simple. Basically, we're just gonna mix all the ingredients all at once in one bowl. The dough comes together very quickly. It is like a moister dough, but it's not sticky because of the olive oil. And then we're gonna, we're gonna split the dough ball into 2, kind of flatten it out a little bit, wrap it in some saran wrap, pop it in the fridge for at least a half an hour. And then once that time has elapsed, take it out, roll it out, fairly thinly. We will take the tines of a fork, poke all over the top of the dough, so that way our crackers don't puff up. We want a nice flat cracker. I then usually at that time spread some olive oil, sprinkle with salt, and then we'll slice them up into whatever size cracker you would like. It would be fun if you had like one of those rollers with a little, kind of crimpy edge. I don't have that. I just use a pizza cutter. You could use a knife, whatever you have. And then they bake up at 350 degrees for 20 to 25 minutes until they're nice and crispy. So very simple. We're going to go all through that together. Yeah, so let's just get started with mixing up our dough. All right, so I have my 1 cup of discard here. Make sure I get that all in. It's a bit sticky. I have my 1 cup of flour. And then I'm going to add in there, 1/4 cup of olive oil. Just going to use the same measuring cup here so I have less dishes to wash. And I do not have fresh herbs right now. It is basically past my time for fresh herbs. So I have just this like kind of Italian seasoning mix. So I'm just going to add that in. So I'm going to use 2 tablespoons. I wouldn't worry about it being super exact for that. And I'm going to add 1/8 teaspoon of garlic powder. And again, the herbs and the garlic are optional, but it definitely will help you have a tasty cracker. And then 1/2 teaspoon of salt. All right, so that's all for our dough. I'm just gonna get this started to mix up. This is my favorite tool to mix this type of dough, like bread doughs, these type of more stickier doughs with. It's called a Danish whisk. So I'm just gonna get it started with this, and then I'll end up having to just mix it, or just finish mixing it with my hands, just to make sure it's all incorporated. We don't necessarily have to knead it, but I do kind of get in there with my hands just to make sure everything's nice and incorporated and I have a smooth dough. And as you can see, it comes together very quickly. This is a very simple, easy recipe. Great to use up a lot of discard. If you have even more, of course, you could double the recipe. You could save up your discard for like a day or two and make a giant batch of crackers. I just make them, sometimes I'll make them a couple times a week. They're easy enough that it's not a big hassle. So just making sure this is all mixed in well, nice and smooth. Getting all the stuff stuck off the bottom. That. And you can tell it's not very sticky. It's the olive oil. Just make a nice pliable dough. All right, so I think that's good. So I'm just going to divide this into half. It doesn't have to be exact, of course. So just pinch that. I got my 2 halves. Just set that to the side for a minute. I'm gonna take some saran wrap. Piece. Cut that off. Oops, usually it cuts. There we go. All right, so I got my saran wrap. I'm gonna take one of my dough balls and I'm gonna kind of just flatten it out into a rectangle-ish shape just by pressing down on it, and wrap that up. I didn't make my saran wrap quite big enough. Just pop that on the top. All right, pop that one to the side. And I'm going to do the same thing with this half of the dough. Just smush it out into a rectangular shape. All right, now I'm just gonna put these in the fridge for about a half an hour, and then we'll come back and we'll get them rolled out. All right, so I just grabbed my dough out of the oven. It's a lot stiffer now. It will be easier to roll out, or out of the oven, out of the refrigerator, excuse me. I have the oven preheating to 350. I have a piece of parchment paper down. I'm gonna roll the dough out right on the parchment paper. I'm just gonna put a little bit of flour. I like to use one of these canisters to sprinkle the flour out. I find that works pretty well. Gonna get this unwrapped out of the saran wrap. I can find where the end of it is. Here we go. All right, just put a little flour on top. And I'm gonna try to keep the rectangle-ish shape because I'm going to put this on a cookie sheet, and of course that is the shape of the cookie sheet. I like to do these pretty thin. All right, that's pretty good. Oops, I'm moving you around here, I think, hitting you with the rolling pin. All right. Rolling pin out of the way. So that's looking pretty good. Make sure it's not super stuck. Doesn't appear to be. All right, so I'm going to now just drizzle a small amount of olive oil, and I'm just gonna, oops, brush that around. And look how pretty they are. All of our seasonings. And I'm gonna sprinkle a small amount of salt. And I'm gonna take a fork and just kind of poke it all over. And this will make it so that the crackers don't get all puffed up. And now I have my pizza cutter. I'm not going to worry about having beautiful, even slices. You can take as much time as you want. Do whatever you need to do to make them sized to your liking. I'm not super worried about it. They're not gonna last very long. You can make them as big or as small as you would like. It doesn't even really matter. Like, that one's pretty big, that one's little. It's gonna be okay. So now I'm just gonna put this one on a baking sheet, and we'll move on to the other piece of dough. I like to scrunch up my parchment so it stays down a little. Sprinkle some flour. Attempt to get this unwrapped. Here we go. This is a little bit bigger of a piece than the other one. You could really do any kind of flavoring on these. I just did, it's like an Italian seasoning mix. But if you wanted to just do rosemary or whatever you wanted, or just make a plain salted one. All right, so this one isn't as great of a rectangle, but that's fine. So same steps. Are we still in the camera? We are. So just gonna drizzle with some olive oil. Brush that around. Sprinkle a little bit of salt. Poke some holes. and get it sliced up. All right, and then I'll slide this onto another baking sheet, and I'm gonna put these into a 350-degree oven for 20 to 25 minutes. My oven has now just preheated. You'll see when they're nice and crispy. Sometimes I let them go a little darker, but I'll show you what they look like when they're done. And yeah, let's get to baking. I just wanted to show you the way I rolled that one out because it wasn't really like a good rectangle. I just had to take a couple of them from the bottom that was like sticking out, and I just placed them along. But yeah, I didn't really mention this, but I'm just gonna bake them just like this. You don't have to move them, spread them around, because they're not gonna spread or anything. So they're just gonna go in just like this. All right. All right, here are our finished crackers. So you can see they don't spread. They just kind of jingled around from me moving the sheet pan about. But nice and crispy. They look really good. So now they just have to cool, and then they can be enjoyed. So I thank you again for joining me on this week's episode where we made sourdough discard crackers. I do hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you give the crackers a try. They're really good, super easy, quick, nice thing to make with your discard. And you can just make them every once and again and just start stockpiling them for the holidays. Or I like to eat cheese and crackers pretty often. That's like one of my favorite lunches, is having some cheese crackers, some pepperoni, maybe like a pickle or something like that. So they don't last long around here. Luke also very much enjoys them. But let me know if you give them a try. Let me know if you'd like to see more recipes involving sourdough discard. There are some other things that I make regularly that do involve discard. And I am also always looking to try, you know, new things to utilize it, just so it's not just getting thrown out. So if you do enjoy, if you wouldn't mind giving this video a thumbs up, leaving a comment, that would be awesome. Subscribe to the channel, that would be great too. Share with your friends if you are enjoying the things that I've been posting on here. You can also find me on Instagram at Mrs. White Homemade Life. I also co-host a podcast called Figuring Out Homestead Life. We just talked about these crackers in a recent episode. We did a bread baking episode, so they did get brought up on there as well. So you can find that wherever you listen to your podcasts. Every podcast player, I believe, has it. It's also on Instagram as well. So again, I thank you, and I hope you have a great day, and happy crackering.